Chapter 1. Arrival at Verdun. A train rattled through the misty fields of northeastern France, carrying new recruits to the front lines. Among them was Private Thomas Harris, a fresh-faced soldier from Yorkshire, clutching a worn photograph of his mother and younger sister. His stomach churned, not just from fear but from the realization that life would never be the same. The station was eerily quiet. No flowers, no townspeople cheering. Only the distant echoes of artillery fire that already marked the air with tension. Thomas could hear the distant roar and the occasional whistling of falling shells. He swallowed hard. Beside him, a French officer, Sergeant Emil Dubois, barked orders to a group of weary soldiers. Emil had already seen 2 years of this hell. His uniform was stained, his hands rough with years of handling rifles and bandages alike. Unlike the newcomers, Emil had learned a cold efficiency. Fear was a luxury you could not afford. Emil to Thomas, listen lad, out there, no one cares if you're scared. You follow orders, you survive. Simple as that. Thomas, yes, Sergeant. His voice trembled slightly. The train screeched to a halt near a mud-choked path leading to the trenches. Soldiers disembarked with the dull resignation of men who had already met death in the faces of others. Chapter 2. First day in the trenches. Thomas's first steps into the trench revealed the full reality. Mud clinging to every boot, rats scuttling along, sandbags, and the stench of fear mixed with human waste. Smoke from ongoing bombardments hung heavy in the air. The distant cries of wounded men echoed eerily. Thomas thinking, this is what they call war. Emil led him down a narrow passage between trenches. Soldiers crouched low, peering over sandbags at the barren no-man's land. Each explosion sent tremors through the earth, knocking soldiers off their feet. Emil, keep your head down. Shells don't discriminate. Hours passed in tense silence. Each man knew the routine. Listen, observe, survive. Then came the first offensive. Artillery screamed, and Thomas froze as a shell exploded near his feet. The force knocked him against the trench wall. Mud and debris covered him. He coughed violently, heart hammering. Emil, move, now, get to cover. Thomas obeyed, trembling. A corporal helped him up, muttering, you'll get used to it, or you won't get out alive. Chapter 3. Bond in the mud. Over the next weeks, Thomas and Emil developed a reluctant respect. The young English soldier's naive optimism clashed with Emil's hardened realism. Yet, when night fell and the firing ceased, the two would talk quietly about life, home, and what it meant to survive. Thomas, I had no idea war smelled like death and wet earth. Emil, that's because you've never seen life in mud and blood, but you'll adapt. You have to. The men shared rations, stale bread, cold beans, and a little wine Emil had saved for emergencies. In the darkness, Thomas sometimes imagined the streets of Paris. Emil had described cafes, lights, music. Emil, in turn, listened to Thomas talk about Yorkshire's green fields, sheep grazing peacefully, a life that felt impossibly distant now. Chapter 4. The offensive by May. The German forces were preparing a massive assault on Verdun. Emil and Thomas were ordered to hold a key stretch of trench under heavy fire. The shelling began at dawn. Every man ducked, instinctively, as artillery ripped through the earth. The ground shook violently. Mudslides buried men alive. Thomas found himself clutching Emil's sleeve. Thomas, I can't do this. Emil, yes, you can. Focus on your breathing. One step at a time. Hours merged into a blur of shouting, smoke, and fire. Emil directed soldiers, patched wounds, and fired his rifle. Thomas followed his lead, barely registering the terror around him. A nearby explosion threw Thomas into the air. He hit the ground, face down in the mud. Dazed, he saw Emil dragging a wounded comrade to safety. Thomas rose unsteadily, realizing he must fight to survive, or die trying. By nightfall, the line was held. Both were exhausted, covered in mud, blood, and grime, yet alive. The victory was temporary, a momentary reprieve in a seemingly endless nightmare. Chapter 5. Letters, home. During a lull in fighting, Thomas wrote a letter to his mother. Dear Mum, the trenches are nothing like I imagined. I've seen men fall before my eyes. Yet I've also seen courage, even in the muddiest corners of hell. Emil Dubois. He's not just a sergeant. He's the reason I'm still alive. I promise I'll come back to you, no matter what. Love, Thomas. Emil, standing nearby, gave a faint smile. Emil, you'll need more than luck to survive, lad, but writing helps, keeps you human. Chapter 6. The gas attack. One morning, a warning sounded, poison gas. Soldiers scrambled for gas masks. Thomas fumbled with the straps, coughing as Emil shouted instructions. Emil, keep it on. Don't take it off. The yellow-green haze rolled through the trench. Men were choking, crying, and some fell unconscious. Thomas felt panic claw at him, but Emil's grip on his shoulder steadied him. Together, they moved forward, guiding other soldiers to safety. By the time the gas lifted, several men had died. Thomas looked at Emil with gratitude and fear. Survival was a fragile thread. Chapter 7. Truce in the shadows. On A rare, quiet evening. Thomas and Emil witnessed something surreal, a temporary ceasefire in a distant section of the battlefield. Soldiers from both sides cautiously emerged from trenches, exchanging small gestures, tending to the wounded. It was a fleeting reminder that humanity could exist even amid unimaginable horror. Emil, see, there's still hope. Thomas, never forget it. Chapter 8. The final push. By late 1916, Verdun became a stalemate. The trench lines barely moved. Casualties mounted. Thomas and Emil had survived multiple offensives, gas attacks, and artillery bombardments. They had lost friends, and each night, the memories haunted them. One day an order came for a count. Emil led Thomas and other soldiers across no man's land. The mud was ankle-deep, barbed wire everywhere, shells screaming overhead. Thomas's rifle jammed. Emil grabbed him. Emil, keep moving, or we're done for. They pressed on, inch by inch, finally reaching the enemy trench. Hand-to-hand combat was chaotic, but the courage they had nurtured in weeks of survival carried them through. By nightfall, the trench was captured. They had survived, yet the cost was immense. Chapter 9. Reflection. Months later, the front stabilized. Thomas and Emil sat together in a quiet trench, exhausted and contemplative. Thomas, I never thought I'd see home again. Emil, home is where you survive, lad, and maybe, someday, you'll see it for real. Both men stared at the horizon, where smoke still lingered, but dawn brought light. The war continued, but they had survived. They had endured. Chapter 10. Homecoming. After the armistice in 1918, Thomas returned to Yorkshire. He carried scars, physical and mental, but he survived. Emil returned to Paris. Both men kept the memories, the letters, the friendship forged in mud, blood, and fire. Thomas visited Verdun once more, years later, standing silently among the trenches. He placed a small stone at the memorial to those who did not return and to those who survived. Never forget, the end hero survives.